My friend was sleeping over at my house. My parents and brother were all sleeping upstairs while we were downstairs watching TV, playing video games and stuff. At around 1 a.m. he asks if this girl can come over. He really wants to get with this girl, and I don't want to turn him down, so I reluctantly agree, on the condition that she's quiet. The three of us are hanging out and I make some excuse to leave the room so my friend can have some alone time with this girl. I'm upstairs in my room when I start hearing loud moans. This is bad news for me, but great news for my friend. He's losing his virginity to a girl he really likes. I hear stirring in the next room and I know that their loud lovemaking has woken my parents. The last thing I want is for my confused father to walk in on my friend boning this girl in my basement. What do? I go to Pornhub, click on the first video I see, crank that shit to 100 on my speakers and let it play for the 3 minutes that my buddy ended up lasting. My dad ended up coming into my room, discovering the source of the noise. I even threw in some fapping motion under the covers, and awkwardly leaving. My buddy ended up having the best time ever, but Jesus, there were some awkward glances exchanged between my parents and I the next morning. As a man that has reached the ripe old age of 48, I can promise you I have seen some shit go down. This one totally takes the cake for me though. I was waiting out front of a truck stop back in the mid-80s. Sitting on a park bench with a guy that had a big Rottweiler kinda dog on a leash with him. I tried to make small talk, but he was quite a sourpuss. So we sat in silence for a few minutes until the most unexpected thing I have ever seen happened right before my very eyes. While we were sitting there, a big 18-wheeler pulls in without a trailer, so he parks right up front like a normal car would. Inside the cab of the truck with the driver is a little monkey. The dance for the organ grinder kind. I think they are called rhesus monkeys perhaps. Well, the dog spots this lil monkey and proceeds to go apeshit over it. Lunging at the end of his leash and barking at the top of his lungs. Generally making a real spectacle of himself, to say the least. The driver is obviously upset, but not nearly as much as the monkey is. Actually, upset may be the wrong adjective to use for the monkey though. In retrospect, I think eagerly aggressive may be a more appropriate description for his disposition. He was pacing the dashboard back and forth, never taking his eyes off of this very aggravating dog. The driver opens his little triangle window that they don't make on cars anymore. The ones made for smokers back in the day. He yells out to this douchebag to call his dog off because it is upsetting his monkey. The guy laughs and says, "No way, I told you he was a jerk, didn't I?" Says that his dog ain't bothering nobody. The dog hasn't shut up since he laid eyes on the monkey. I promise you he is bothering everybody for several blocks around. Now here's where things start to get interesting. The driver says that if he doesn't call his dog off, he's gonna let his monkey loose on that dog. Douchebag laughs and says that his dog would eat that monkey alive. Upon hearing this, the driver leans over and reaches into his box, I guess. Pulls out one of those tiny baseball bats like you used to get at Astroworld or carnivals, and places it in the monkey's hand. The monkey obviously knows what's about to go down because he is now trying to squeeze out of that little triangular window I mentioned earlier. This monkey has murder in his eyes if I have ever seen it. Driver hollers, "Last chance to save your dog's ass, man." In response, douchebag lets his dog off of the leash. Now we have a situation that has escalated to the point where we have a dog jumping up at the window and a monkey screaming profanities right back at him. Well, the driver finally rolls down the regular window and out leaps all kinds of miniature primate hell. The dog never knew what hit him. Quick as a flash, this monkey is riding on the back of this dog's neck. His two back feet all wrapped up in his neck fur with one hand hanging onto an ear. The other hand, as you may have guessed by now, is steadily and mercilessly raining down blows about this dog's head and face. I mean hard blows. Well, it only took a moment for the dog to realize he was in way over his head. He bolts yelping bloody murder as he runs away at full speed. I mean, this dog is running so fucking hard he's throwing up tufts of grass and dirt as soon as he leaves pavement. The monkey still riding him and beating on him the whole time. Douchebag acts like he wants to fight now, but several people including myself stepped in to stop that nonsense. In a couple of minutes or so, the little monkey comes loping back with his little bat still in hand, and leaps up into the still open window of the truck to await his master, who has gone on into the store. One time I was pretty drunk with a friend at a Target. This little 5 to 7 year old with a mohawk was being an insufferable little prick in the action figure section. I heard him from like 5 aisles over and it was like nails on a chalkboard. I tell my friend, I'm gonna fart on this kid's head. Watch and learn. I saunter on over to the aisle in question and see the vile little prick calling his mom an idiot for not buying him a huge G.I. Joe the movie vehicle, which pissed me off even more considering how awful that movie was. I already bought that one for you and you broke it by throwing it down the stairs, said the mom. Shut up. I need it. It's the only one I don't have now, responded the kid. At the time, I was on a strict Chipotle carnitas burrito diet. And while I was watching all this, my stomach gave me an initial warning gurgle telling me I was about an hour away from punishing the toilet. Serendipity. Destiny. I inch a bit closer to my prey, inspecting some wrestling toys and pondering the weird homoeroticness of the whole sport in general. The kid shouts, "F you, I hate you." The mom rolls her eyes and turns her back to the kid to ignore him. And could you believe it, the kid gets on his hands and knees and starts taking the toy out of the box. It's go time. I position my back towards him and at this point am like 2 feet away from him. His head is down, getting frustrated with those goddamn twisty tie things, and I go for the kill. I bend down to reach for the one of the toys on the lower shelf. At this point, my ass is inches away from this kid's head. Now, generally speaking, the best way to go about this is to act casual, drop your belly bomb, then walk away after a few seconds like nothing is out of the ordinary. I usually go 1 aisle over and listen to the kid's reaction in delight. However, today I couldn't help myself. I have my head tilted back looking at this kid out of the corner of my eye, to ensure accuracy. I'm so close that from a distance it looks like I'm about to sit on him. My friend sees this happening and can no longer contain himself. He's covering his mouth, but his hyperventilating donkey chortle is fairly audible over the late 90s pop music playing on the loudspeakers. The kid immediately looks up towards the laughter, but can't help notice there is an ass now directly in his face. Now, I'm trying not to laugh, but also panicking as I just made eye contact with him. He furrows his brow and I look over in the mother's direction, still back towards us. I relish in the moment and the look on this child's confused and naive face. The initial blast was mighty and boisterous. I swear I saw his hair blowing in the wind. If I wasn't wearing jeans, I think it could have probably blown over an empty soda can. I would call it a very fun fart. However, what immediately followed that out the chamber was truly horrifying. The fart's implication changed without notice and swiftly. It went from a joyous, dry airhorn squeal to a nefarious, hissing mephitis. The little moppet noticed the hateful metamorphosis before even I did because he wretched his neck violently trying to get away from the personified evil being fumigated into his soul. Because of his positioning, hovering over the toy, hands and knee, it was all in vain as the only way out was forward and forward would mean certain death. I had positioned myself well on the higher ground, free to escape or relent at any time and him, poor and immobilized, biding his time until the cruel attack was over. Obviously, this child needed to reread Sun Tzu. In total, it lasted about 4 seconds but for that kid, it must have seemed like time was frozen. The long-term severe brain damage which he no doubt suffered, only added to that effect. The only thing the kid could manage to do was burst into tears. The mom turns around to see her kid with an open toy, crying on the floor and me minding my own business. She walks up to him and asks what's wrong but the kid can't speak. It took every fiber in my body not to laugh. Back on a middle shelf, turn around, give a final nonchalant look-see and then begin to take my exit. When I was in 6th grade, my small-town school track team did very well and was allowed to compete in the state finals. My event was the 200-meter dash, and while I did okay against the other small towns we normally faced, I had no chance at state. This was pretty much the case for most of us, so we mostly goofed off and explored the massive arena and whatever. I wasn't allowed soda at home, but somebody bought me a huge Coke and I thought it was pretty great. Came time for me to run my race, well actually my heat in the preliminaries as this thing was so big time that they actually had more runners than would fit on the track at once. Coach tells me to do my best and have fun. Nobody expects much, it's just an honor to be there. I line up on this beautiful, wide cinder track with maybe 15 lanes and an unbelievable crowd watching. Big grandstands full of people, all new to me. I get kind of excited about the whole thing. So we all set our feet in the blocks, crouch down and tense up, waiting for the shot from the starter pistol. While a hush settles over the crowd, we're on edge waiting for the bang. When the starter fires, I take this huge leap forward like I'm going to sprint the whole 200 meters, which is pretty much what people who are good at it do, but not my usual approach. This massive physical effort simultaneously propels the most violent, loudest fart of my life out my preteen stinkhole. Most of the crowd hasn't trained to the peak physical level that I have, so their reaction to the pistol shot is a tiny bit slower. The effect is that after the bang but before anyone makes a single sound, my fart echoes through the arena with unbelievable clarity and tone. For everyone there it's just like bang. Fart. I manage a few strides just out of instinct before realization of what's happening starts to set in. I glance over at the crowd and in that split second I can just see it on every face. They know. They all know and they are all looking right at me. This starts me laughing super hard while also running as hard as I ever have, and what's my body's reaction to that unusual combination? Yep, fart a lot more. However, I am now taking strides pretty rapidly, so instead of one big blast, I'm ripping a little one with each step. I can't even think of what letters could represent the sound. If you can imagine a rapid series of very brief, very loud farts, that's pretty much it. This whole situation has only taken like 10 seconds to develop, we aren't even halfway done yet and I've farted about 15 times. I literally could not continue from laughing so damn hard. I stumble to a hunched over stop right there in the middle of the fanciest arena I've ever been to, giggling like the farting idiot I am. I then realize that nobody is rushing past me, which come to think of it should have happened by this time in the race regardless of the fart situation. I turn around and every one of the other runners is either lying on the ground or crouched over laughing just as hard as I am. Literally crying laughing. Apparently, my fart-propelled lunge off the line had taken most of them out and the rest succumbed to my staccato or presentation. And that's the story of how an entire heat was eliminated from the 200-meter state finals with no one completing the event, which I was told had never happened before in the history of state finals. I escaped amazingly unscathed as the tiny handful of people from my school were all setting up for their own events and not watching.